Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Of course, I'm your Commander in Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. We're talking best value at the edge rushing position for the Commanders throughout this entire draft. Each round that they have a selection, rounds 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7. We've done that for the running back position. We're going to do that for the edge rushing position. We're going to knock down receiver this week, along with tight end. We'll do the same thing for those positions. We'll get to defensive line and corners next week as we continue to hone in on all of the positions heading into the draft. So before we get to any of that conversation, however, the Commanders did make a move today, hiring former NFL wide receiver Wes Welker to their staff. Now, he's been in the NFL. I think he was a wide receivers coach in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. So not a massive surprise that he's being added to this staff, because I've always told you that in the NFL, as long as you've got a friend, you've got a job. And Wes Welker, good buddies with Cliff Kingsbury, good buddies with Adam Peters. So again, as long as you've got a friend in the league, you've got a gig. Let's take a look at the tweet that Ben Standing put out. This was first reported by Mike Reese on X, who had the news that Welker was joining the Commander's staff. Standing put out a tweet earlier that said former Patriots wide receiver Wes Welker is joining the Commander's staff. Source confirms. Mike Reese had it first, as I just mentioned. His role will be personnel analyst. What the hell is a personnel analyst, right? And that's what I'm talking about, is you just make up a position. If it's your boy and you want him to be on the staff, I've seen guys like Mike Vrabel last year. They made up some crazy ass title, like assistant head coach and something else. And I'm like, okay, whatever, bro. Like, what the hell is a personnel analyst? Who cares, right? He'll be working with both the personnel staff and the coaching staff. So he'll be working with both players and the staff. Again, it's a weird position title, but, you know, it's funny because everybody quickly draws a direct correlation to Luke McCaffrey. White wide receiver in the slot, white wide receiver we drafted last year that plays in the slot too. Oh, this is going to be great for Luke McCaffrey. What if this is more about Deebo Samuel than it is Luke McCaffrey? Right. I told y'all that we fall victim and prey to the white thing all the time, right? We do it all the time. I'm guilty, right? I'm trying to rewire my brain. So when I'm looking at a white receiver, I don't just comp him to another white receiver because that's the easy thing to do, right? But here are some of the connections as to why he was brought here. And this, again, via Ben Standing on X. Welker and Cliff Kingsbury were teammates in college. Both were at Texas Tech in the early 2000s. Adam Peters crossed paths not only with him in San Francisco, as I talked about him being a wide receivers coach there. He crossed paths with him in Denver when Peters was a scout there. Welker was there with Peyton Manning, if you recall. There, I think he finished up his career in Denver, and then he was also in New England, which is where he really kind of made a name for himself in the NFL. I think he really caught Belichick's attention when he was in Miami. And then he became a free agent. Belichick scooped him up, and then he became Wes Welker, the one that everyone knows as a slot demon in this league. So it's amazing when you think about it that in just about every one of his stops, he's crossed paths with Adam Peters. So makes a ton of sense, again, that he's brought here. But this is the thing that I think is the most important. And not that he can't help a guy like Luke McCaffrey, but I think that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the easy thing to do, as we like to do. But Welker was with Deebo Samuel as his wide receiver coach the first 3 seasons of his career. Welker was the one who stayed on top of Deebo's training, and weight fluctuations became an issue when his weight fluctuations became an issue. So something to keep note of. I don't really know if this is more so because the Deebo, again, Welker was probably looking for some work. I got you, bro. And this guy was really good in the league. So You don't want to step on your current wide receiver, Bobby Ingram's toes by bringing in another wide receivers coach. You already have an assistant wide receivers coach on the staff. So instead of bringing him in on some sort of wide receiver coach title, which would kind of feel a little bit off-putting to the guys that are already here, you bring him in with this random title, which allows him to dip his toe in the wide receiver pool, help out the coaching staff, be one of the guys and be around the building, maybe help Deebo Samuel a little bit in the wide receiver room, help, Luke McCaffrey, and anybody else that could use some help. So the more the merrier. This is one of those brotherhood moves, and I got no issues with it. And hopefully Welker comes in here and is able to help this wide receiver group and just this team overall take the next step. It's a very vital season next year because everyone can talk about last year with reverence. We can't stop talking about last year, but at some point you got to start looking forward to next year. And, if you are a hater, right, you don't want to see the Commanders, and there are a lot of them out there that don't want to see the Commanders do well, don't want to see Jaden Daniels succeed in this league, want to see us take a step back. They're calling last year a fluke. So this year is pivotal to show that not only was last year not a fluke, but this is our new existence. And as a fan that has PTSD and suffers from PTSD, I need to see myself that last year was not a fluke. I don't think it was a fluke. I know what we have in Jaden Daniels. I know what they're building. And I just want to see it continue in 2025. So another move that hopefully helps us get back to where we were last year and maybe exceed what we did a season ago. So with that said, let's now transition to the best value at the edge rushing position for the Commanders in each round that they will be selecting. So I'll give you a list of names in the first few picks for the Commanders, first, second, and fourth, because there will be several options that I think make the most sense. As we get to the later rounds, as I always tell you, it's a crapshoot. I think at that point, you start looking for measurables. You start looking for athleticism. They've kind of shown us the blueprint for what they look for at the end of a draft last year with the selection of Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Height, weight, speed, length, specimen. So you kind of have the blueprint there if they decide to do that again. I highly doubt that they decide to take the 6th or 7th round route with edge rusher. Let me say this as well. If you ask me right now, and again, this is not knowing how the board ultimately shapes up and who's available, at the time of the Commanders selections in each of the first 4 rounds, right? Well, first, second, and fourth round. Without knowing who's available, I will tell you right now that edge rusher gives this team the best value, I believe. I think there will be the most players available potentially at each of their selections in rounds 1, 2, and 4 that give you the best bang for your buck, so to speak. So to me, if you're a Commanders fan, you're looking for them to attack edge rusher in one of those first 3 selections. Again, I'm of the mindset that they're going to trade back at some point, whether that's the first round or the second round, and accumulate more picks. And so right now, that 3rd round is also a sweet spot. We don't have a 3rd round pick. So I think they're going to try their hardest to acquire one because, again, the best value in this year's draft is in day number 2. So if you can get a 3rd round pick, I think the Commanders would feel really good about that. And I think edge rusher is another one, along with running back. Those are 2 positions in particular where I think the value is going to be its strongest in day 2. And we're missing a day 2 selection in the 3rd round right now. And I know they would love to have one. But with that said, first round, I think there's a chance that there are 3 guys. So I'll just say this. The best value aligns with 3 guys in particular in the first round. And you could even add a 4th, and I'll throw that name out here in a second. But James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, we've talked about him, his length, his athleticism, explosion. His first couple of steps are dynamic off the edge. He's a guy out of Tennessee that you may have to vet. There may be some things there that you have to. I just don't see him lasting. I just don't. After the combine that he turned in, I think that he's a guy that's going to be gone before the 29th selection. Michael Williams is the guy that I think gives you the best value at 29 if you're thinking edge rusher. And there's a chance he could be there. Now, he just took an invite from the NFL to be in Green Bay for the draft. I don't know how to feel about that because, he may just want to experience the draft and not that he's going to go top 15. But again, with his kind of talent, his skill set, it's going to be hard pressed for me to see a scenario in which he's still available at 29. But because of the lack of production and there are other positions in this draft that may entice teams to go elsewhere, maybe he falls. I doubt it. I do. I doubt it. But he gives you the best value of any of the edge rushers that I think could be available at 29. He's the one that sticks out like a sore thumb, that gives you the best versatility, that has the upside to match and played against high-level competition, so you don't have to worry about that. Same could be said for James Pierce Jr. But Michael Williams is the guy that, to me, gives you the best value in the first round as an edge rusher, if he can somehow be on the board. Donovan Izaraku is another guy that would give you tremendous value at 29 if he were to be available. And I think there's a very realistic shot that he is available. There are a couple of teams that are before Washington, like the Baltimore Ravens, for instance, that I could see him being a great fit for, that could easily take him prior to the Washington Commanders having an opportunity to do so. But again, he's a guy that gives you tremendous value at 29 if the Commanders are to stick and pick. And then one last name, but I have him more so as a second round guy. But another name that you could throw in there as good value if the Commanders were to take him would be Mike Green, the edge rusher out of Marshall. Another guy, highly skilled, explosive, dynamic, would give you tremendous value at 29. But I think more so because of his off the field issues. And again, you got a vet. And, his is more serious than James Pierce, which is why I don't think there's any chance James Pierce gets to 29, because I don't think his off-the-field issues are anywhere near as significant as Mike Green's are. Green's issue, forced him to transfer schools. It was also an issue in high school that had to be resolved. So there's a number of things there that teams may be uncomfortable with. And I think we're one of those teams that's going to be uncomfortable with Mike Green. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even think Mike Green's on our board. Just to be perfectly honest with you, they probably talked to the young man to kind of see, what kind of person. And look, he's going to nail these interviews. You'd be an idiot not to, right? Even Johnny Manziel killed it in the interview process. Okay, like, you're going to be the best version of yourself, because this is the biggest interview you will have in your life if you're an athlete. So he's not going to mess it up. So you're not going to gain a ton by talking to him, other than maybe getting some clarity as to what happened from his perspective and point of view. But if your mind's already made up, then I just don't see how Mike Green has a Commander's tag. I just don't see how that happens. But speaking of which, you get to the second round, he's the best value in the second round. If you can get to 61 overall and he's still on the board, even with some of the issues, which is why he would land at 61, is because teams said thanks, but no thanks. At some point, someone's going to take him. You'd love to be the team to stop the slide. But again, if you're not going to take him at 29, if you're the Commanders, I don't know if you're necessarily going to change your mind because it's tremendous value all of a sudden at 61, right? If he doesn't fit your building, if he doesn't fit what your definition of a Commander is, you're not going to alter that because you're sitting there in the second round or the fourth round and he's still on the board. Like, if he's not a Commander, he's not a Commander, and it doesn't matter what round. Just like we've had the conversation about the wide receiver out of LSU. If he's not a Commander, it doesn't matter, well, let's just take a 6th or 7th round flyer. If he's not a Commander, he's not a Commander. Period. End of discussion. You don't compromise your building or what you stand for because a guy's super talented, if that's your belief. I was watching Howie Roseman, I think, during the league meetings, right? He did an interview where he said, if a guy has ever been wrapped up or convicted of domestic violence, domestic abuse, he said, we can't do it. Like, that's a non-starter for him. He's not even on our board. So for some teams, it's just a non-starter, bro. Like, and we've already talked about that. We talked about it on the Commanders Kings. Once you put your hands on a female, the perception changes. Like, you can get away with a lot of shit. Okay. The Eagles took a defensive tackle that was racing in a vehicle that ultimately, his teammate got killed in an accident while they were racing, right? He wasn't driving the vehicle, but he was in the other vehicle that was racing, right? That led to a teammate's death. That's immaturity. He's fine, right? Well, you'll get rid of that, right? We'll make an environment where he'll be fine, right? Just don't put your hands on a female. That's the one, that it's unforgivable. So we got some things to talk about with Mike Green. If he's there in the second round, I think it's tremendous value. I just don't think he's going to be a commander, period. Ashton Gelati is a guy that I talked about. The Commanders have already met with him. This seems like right around where he would come off the board. So he would be good value for the Commanders at 61 overall. JT Tuimalu, the edge rusher out of Ohio State, who I really, really am a fan of his game. I think he would fit what we are doing. He's like a less active, right? A less explosive and dynamic Frankie Louvu, but a guy that I think you can do a lot with and can do some really good things and is always around the football. And then Nick Scorton. For some reason, he just screams commander to me. Seems like something we would do. Nick Scorton. And you know what? I have no issues with Nick Scorton. Good football player. I think he will be available at 61. And if he were the selection, I'd have no issues with it. I think he could be a good football player as long as I think you narrow the focus of what you ask Nick Scorton to do, right? So then you get to the fourth round. And Oluwafemi Oladipo. So Femi Oladipo, guy that we've talked about a ton because the Commanders have had him in for a top 30 visit, just like they did Ashton Gelati. He's a guy that is an ascending player in this draft. But again, I look at him and I say, how many teams look at the upside or they look at the downside of him, making that position switch and saying, hey, he's going to be a lot of work to continue to mold him into the player you want him to be. We don't have that kind of time. We'll pass, right? Versus the teams that say there's tremendous upside here. We like the athleticism. We like the physical profile and makeup. And so we're willing to take a roll of the dice on him. I think Oluwafemi Oladipo is more of a third round pick to me. So if you get him in the fourth round, that is, to me, tremendous value. Kyle Kennard is a guy that I think should go in the fourth round out of South Carolina. And so he'd be solid value for the Commanders if they decided to go edge rusher there. But to me, the best value in the fourth round, and again, this is another day two guy for me personally, is Braden Swinson, the edge out of LSU. Former Oregon Duck, transferred over to LSU. We've talked about him. I'm a lot higher on him probably than most. I don't know where everyone else stands on Braden Swinson, but I think he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. I thought he did some really good things at LSU his final year there. And the light bulb started to really come on for him. You saw a lot of his exploits and what he can provide as he continues to get bigger, stronger. I saw the hand usage. I saw the ability to duck and turn the corner. I saw a guy that, was able to be extremely physical against tight ends in the run game and really be in the backfield as a nuisance. Has great closing speed to get to the quarterback. Lots of talent and upside with Braden Swinson. And I'm just hoping teams pass on him and allow him to fall to the Commanders. You know how I am. I don't know if they feel the same way that I do about Braden Swinson, but I just want the opportunity to draft him. That's all I ever asked for. And if they don't draft him, that means that they weren't as high on him as I was, right? And that's fine. But I just want the opportunity. I just want him to be there, right? So to me, Braden Swinson is the best possible value for the Commanders in the fourth round if you're going to go edge rusher. If he is available, I don't see how this guy gets out of the third round. I don't. which is why I said you really, really, really could use the 3rd round pick if you're the Commanders, which is why it feels like one of those first 2 picks is going to be moved back at some point to acquire that 3rd round selection. Then you get to the 6th round, and you know how I get once you get past the 5th round. It's whatever. Just throw your hands up, right? That said, I think the best possible value for the Commanders in the 6th round at edge rusher is Elijah Roberts, SMU edge rusher, 6'4", 285. So he's kind of in that mold of what we've seen them kind of move towards this year with the physical edge rusher. Now, he's a lot bigger at 285, but this man has registered 14 sacks over the last 2 years and 4 forced fumbles. Started out at Miami, transferred over to SMU, and really, started to tear things up once he got to SMU. And, the first thing you think about is, well, he goes from playing in the ACC to the the AAC, and you're like, but then he comes back to the ACC when SMU transfers over to that conference this past year and helps SMU win the ACC, and he notches double-digit sacks. So this is a guy that has some good athleticism, physical, and gives you versatility, which they love, right? He could play base 4-3 defensive end. I think you can kick him inside and play some 3 tech, so I think he can do a little bit of everything. So he'd be interesting in the 6th round. And then in the 7th round, they've shown us the DNA profile of what they're looking for. When they take a flyer on the 7th round edge rusher, you look at a guy like John Baptiste, right? 6'5", 200. I think he was 240 coming out of Notre Dame. Ran a 4, 5 something, 4.6 something, something along those lines. Tested really well. 33 and some change inch arms. Bigger hands. So pause. But all of those things, that's what they're looking for, right? If you're gonna go edge rusher, you go height, weight, speed. Fadil Diggs out of Syracuse fits that bill to me in the 7th round if they were to go that route. 6'4", 257, ran a 4.57 40, a 1.6 split, which is tremendous in terms of the 10-second split. So 10-second. 10-yard. I don't know why I keep saying 10-second. 10-yard split is 1.6 flat. So, which is tremendous, right? Shows you explosion, get off. He was a guy that was able to really wreak havoc his last year at Syracuse. So the arrow is pointing up for Fadil Diggs. Very inconsistent, but you see the tools there that you can work with, the athleticism, the length, over 33, almost 34-inch arms. So all the tools are there. All the things that you're looking for on a 7th round flyer are there. And to me, he would be a really good value for the Commanders if they were to go that direction late in the draft. To me, it feels like the Commanders are going to take care of edge rusher within the first 3 picks. Again, you can shuffle this however you like, but it feels like the first 3 picks are going to be some combination of corner, edge, running back. Now, again, another position could sneak in there because it's better value, and I'm all for it because we've talked about this all process long. It's all about getting the best value for the selection, and whether that's a tight end, an offensive tackle, or a guard or whatever, right? Offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a safety, whatever that looks like for them. Do that, okay? But it feels like the first 3 selections, assuming that they don't trade back, right? Because again, if you're able to trade back from 29 and pick up 2 additional picks, right? You move back 7 spots, pick up a 3rd rounder and a 4th rounder in this year's draft, right? You probably, if you move back to the 2nd round, you're probably gonna get a 3rd, a 4th, and probably like a 7th or something like that. But whatever the case may be, right? You move back, and now you all of a sudden you have a 3rd and another 4th. Well, it could change the way you feel about, maybe I don't need to draft a running back right now. I get one in the 3rd round, right? Whereas if you don't have the 3rd round pick, I probably need to take the running back in the 2nd round, because by the time the clock comes back around to my pick in the 4th round, all of the stuff that I'm interested in might be gone, right? So it could change the way they decide to handle these selections just based off of what is available to them. You move back, you pick up a 3rd round pick, and it could alter the way that they decide to attack the draft. But again, to me, these are the guys that give you the best value. In the 1st round, Mykel Williams is the best value for the Commanders at 29 if you're looking edge rusher. Also, names of note there, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee and Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College. In the 2nd round, Mike Green gives you the best value if he's still around at 61, the edge rusher out of Marshall. Again, I would be shocked if he ends up being a Commander. I do not think they're looking for a guy with his off the field issues. When you hear them talk about what is a Commander and what it stands for, I don't know if Mike Green fits that bill. They're probably going to allow some other team to deal with the off the field questions, and he may end up being a model citizen at the NFL level. I just don't know if they're willing to take that risk. It doesn't feel like something that they would do at this juncture. Maybe 5 years down the road when the program is established and you've got a better situation going where you can insulate something like that, maybe. But right now, in year 2 of your recalibration, as you're trying to establish what it means to be a Commander, I just don't think Mike Green fits. But from a value standpoint, he'd be absolutely the best value. You're talking about a 1st round top 20 talent in this year's draft class. If he were to fall to 61, it'd be hard to pass up on that opportunity, but I just don't see him being a Commander. Other names that would make great sense for the Commanders in the 2nd round, give you tremendous value. Ashton Gelati out of Louisville, JT Tuimalu, edge rusher out of Ohio State, and Nick Scorton, edge rusher out of Texas A&M. 4th round, Olafemi Oladijo, edge rusher out of UCLA. Kyle Kennard, edge rusher out of South Carolina. But the best value in the 4th round would be LSU's Braden Swinson, a guy that I absolutely love in this draft and hope that the Commanders have an opportunity to select him. Probably, again, I think he doesn't get out of day 2, but somehow he makes it to the 4th round. You got to try to do what you can to get your hands on him. 6th round, Elijah Roberts, SMU, edge rusher, transferred over from Miami for his final 2 years of collegiate ball, played extremely well at SMU, 6'4", 285 pounds, 14 sacks, 4 forced fumbles over the last 2 seasons. A guy that I think kind of fits what the Commanders shifted to this offseason in terms of bigger defensive linemen who are stouter at the point of attack, but they're still looking for value in being able to move guys around and have them produce. I think Elijah Roberts makes a ton of sense if you're looking at it from that prism. And then 7th round, Fadil Diggs, Syracuse edge rusher, transferred over from Texas A&M to Syracuse for his final 2 years of college ball, 6'4", 257, ran a 4.57 40, 1.6 10-yard split, which is phenomenal in terms of get off. This is a guy that is explosive. That athleticism that I just told you about shows that very inconsistent tape, but you see flashes of a guy with length at 6'4" and some change, 33, almost 34-inch arms, speed and explosion. So there's a lot of workable traits and tools there. And that's the kind of guy you take in the 7th round. And they showed us the blueprint last year with Javonte John-Baptiste. So that's my edge rusher best value for the Commanders. Leave it down in the comment section. What do you think? And we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. Kind of feels like edge rusher, corner, running back, as I've said, in some order will be their first 3 selections. But again, you start trading back, you pick up more picks, that could easily change. And again, the board falls a certain way. You like one of these offensive linemen, like a Josh Connolly, falls to you at 29. Maybe that's the pick. But we're just talking about edge rushers right now and the best value. And those are the guys that give you, to me, the best value at each of the Commanders' respective selections in the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the best value for the Commanders edge rusher edition. We'll be back to do this with the wide receivers later on this week. Same with the tight end position. Then we'll we'll then what's the word I'm looking for? It was right on the tip of my tongue. We'll then go to the defensive line and safeties and continue through the rest of these positions and getting through as many of them as we can as we head on this crash course to the draft. So I'll see you guys a little bit later on. If I can get a wide receiver video off today, I will. If I can't, then it will be tomorrow. We'll get that going. And then we'll just run through those receivers. It's so many of them in this year's draft class. The high-end talent may not be there necessarily, but the value in the position is definitely solid throughout. So we'll talk about receivers, and we'll get that process going. So and with that said, you guys, get out of here. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. If you haven't already done so, please do me a huge favor. Hit the like button on the way out. Helps this channel grow exponentially. Doesn't cost you a thing, but again, helps this channel grow. So with that said, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. See you next time.